"I'll work, till my hands bleed," she promised, her voice shaking with equal parts fear and determination. Dust clung to her torn dress, and her eyes carried the exhaustion of someone who hadn't slept in days. But the widowed rancher, standing tall with his weathered hat shadowing his face, didn't blink. Instead, he asked the words that made her knees weaken. "Can you be a mother?" The prairie wind howled through the brittle grass, carrying the echo of his question farther than she wanted it to go. She had come here thinking she would earn her way with labor, tending the ranch, mending fences, or cooking for a man too lonely to care how his supper was salted. But motherhood, that word carried a weight heavier than the rancher's oxen could ever drag. He studied her. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, etched with grief, and she knew without asking that the grave on the hill behind the house belonged to his wife. Beside it, two smaller mounds sat, marked with wooden crosses weathered and crooked, too small for grown men, too large for pets. She shivered. "I didn't come here to take anyone's place," she whispered. "Only to survive." The rancher tilted his head, then glanced toward the cabin window where a child's pale face peered out, pressed against the glass. The girl looked no older than 8, her braids tangled, her stare as sharp as broken glass. "That's Sarah," the rancher said. "She hasn't spoken in months. Needs a mother more than I need a hand." The woman's breath caught. She had survived hunger, cold, and men who'd taken more than they'd given, but the silence of that child frightened her in a way bullets never could. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere left. The town had cast her out with nothing but shame and whispers, and this ranch was the last gate still open. Her choices were ashes now. "I can try," she said finally, the words scraping her throat. The rancher gave a slow nod, though his eyes never softened. "Then we'll see if God put you here for a reason, or if the devil's playing games with us both." The nights came colder out here, the silence of the land broken only by the cry of coyotes and the restless stamp of horses. She worked from dawn, fetching water until her shoulders burned, milking until her fingers cramped, cooking simple meals that drew no thanks, only stares. The girl followed her sometimes, silent as a ghost, always watching. One night, she woke to the sound of the girl's soft sobbing. She found her sitting by the fire, clutching a rag doll so tightly its stitched smile had torn. "Sarah," she whispered. The girl's eyes flashed with fear, then suspicion. She pressed her lips tighter, shaking her head. The woman knelt, her own hands trembling. She reached, but Sarah flinched back as if touched by flame. Behind them, the rancher's voice carried low. "She don't trust easy. Neither do I." The woman turned, startled to see him awake, standing in the shadows like a man who never truly slept. "I don't ask for trust," she said softly. "Only a chance." The days bled into one another, sun and dust grinding her bones, but she stayed. Sometimes, the girl would leave little things on the table, a wildflower, a broken button, a feather. Silent offerings, fragile bridges. She kept them, treasured them, never speaking of them aloud. Then came the night of the storm. The winds tore at the roof, rain like knives slashing the earth. The cattle panicked, the barn door ripped loose, and thunder shook the valley. She ran into the dark, skirts dragging in the mud, hauling wood to brace the door, shoving her shoulder against the weight of beasts frantic with fear. Her body screamed, but she didn't stop until the rancher dragged her inside, mud streaking both of them. For the first time, his hand lingered on her arm. "You've got fight," he muttered. "But fight don't make a mother." Her chest ached at the words, harsher than the storm. It was Sarah who answered days later. A whisper so small she almost thought she'd imagined it. "Why are you here?" The woman froze, the basket of eggs trembling in her hands. Sarah stood behind her, braids damp, eyes wide. "Because I had nowhere else to go," the woman said honestly. "But maybe I was meant to be here. With you." The girl studied her, then turned away. But that night, the rag doll was left on her pillow. Spring brought more than flowers. It brought danger. A band of drifters came riding through, their laughter cruel, their eyes lingering too long on her face, her body. The rancher met them with his rifle, but the tension was a noose. One man sneered, "Heard you took in a stray. She working for you, or serving you?" The woman's stomach twisted, shame rising hot, but before she could speak, the rancher cocked his rifle. "She's under my roof," he said coldly. "That makes her under my protection." The drifters left, but the fear they planted lingered like a sickness. That night, the rancher sat at the table long after supper, staring at the fire. "You'll never escape what folks say," he told her. "But my girl don't need a worker. She needs someone who'll stay when talk gets ugly. I've stayed through worse," she said quietly. His eyes lifted to hers, steady, unreadable. "Then prove you ain't just passing through." The proof came sooner than she expected. It was Sarah who disappeared one afternoon, wandering off toward the creek. The rancher's face turned ashen when they discovered her missing. They searched until dusk, calling her name, fear scraping raw every nerve. The woman found her at last, standing barefoot on the rocks, staring at the water. "I wanted to see Mama," Sarah whispered. "She said she'd meet me in the water." The woman's heart broke. She knelt, pulling Sarah into her arms though the girl fought at first. "She can't come back, Sarah," she murmured. "But she'd want you safe. She'd want you loved." The child clung then, trembling against her chest, the first warmth she'd allowed. When they returned, the rancher's face changed. For the first time, his eyes softened. "You brought her back," he said, his voice rough. The woman held Sarah tighter, meeting his gaze. "I'll keep bringing her back. As long as it takes." The days grew gentler after that. Sarah began to speak more, a trickle of words at first, then full sentences, always careful, always testing. The rancher watched, silent, his grief still a wall but one with cracks now showing light. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, he stood beside her on the porch. "You said you'd work, till your hands bled," he said quietly. "But you've given more than work." She swallowed, the silence heavy. "I never wanted to replace her," she whispered. "You can't," he said. "But you've made Sarah laugh again. And you've made this house feel alive." His hand brushed hers, rough and uncertain. "Maybe God did send you," he murmured. "Not for me. For her." Her eyes burned with tears she hadn't known were waiting. The prairie stretched endless before them, a land of hardship, loss, and silence. Yet, for the first time, she felt the weight of belonging settle on her shoulders, not as a burden but as a promise. She had come here to survive. But in the heart of a child who had lost everything, she had found a reason to live. And as the widowed rancher stood beside her, watching the land they both now shared, she knew the hardest work was not with her hands but with her heart. And this time, she was willing to bleed for it.